Welcome back to Basin Motorsports for another day here in the garage. So it's mid-November here. Snow has not started to fall yet, but I'm going to take advantage of a nice 50-degree day and put the WideFox away for the winter. So today I'm just kind of step you through everything I do to put my cars away here in the garage. Maybe it'll help you if you need to do the same. And I'll give you some advice on things that I don't have to do, but you might, depending on your situation. At the end of this, I'm going to update you on some changes I'm making to the 2020 plan, which I've shared before. And I think you're going to like them, even though it's not going to be the same as what I've told you before. So when I start to put my cars away, typically I like to do things in patterns. So I work from inside to outside, top to bottom, and that gives me the chance to basically go over the car thoroughly, piece by piece, and kind of clear it out in, I guess I'd call it sections. And that way I can make sure it's ready to go before I move on to the next one. So I start typically in the trunk of my notchback, or basically any car I put together for the winter storage. I basically start from the inside, and today I'm going to start on the trunk. For me, what that means is I need to vacuum out, ooh, there's a couple more extra rocks in there, vacuum out the trunk area itself. Now my battery's in the back, so I use just a simple battery tender that leaves it plugged in, and it comes up over the seal. So that'll keep the battery fresh all winter. You can see the bag in there, that is for the sunroof, and then the carpeted panels. Now you can see my chair will go back in there. There is my coffee holder, my drink holder that I use. And then everything else is just vacuumed out. Just clean it up, that way it's good shape. Once I close the trunk and seal it up, it is going to be ready for next year. All right, so moving on from the trunk, next is going to be the interior. So you can see I still need to vacuum that out, but then I will just go through real quick, wipe down all the panels, the dash, any of the center console piece there, just kind of vacuum the seats, wipe everything down, even in the back seat, even though I don't carry passengers or anything else. Sometimes you get a little bit of dirt and stuff in there, so I'll just go ahead and vacuum that out real quick, wipe everything down all the way to the sill, even down there in the green. Wipe that down, that stays nice and clean. And then the interior is going to be done. All right, so once the interior is clean, I then start on the outside. So I start with glass typically. So sunroof gets cleaned on the outside, front windshield. Now remember, this is a brand new windshield, so it's usually pretty easy to clean. I don't normally run wipers, so I just take them off, put them in the trunk in case I need them. Clean the outside all the way around, quarter windows, side windows, back glass, all that stuff. All that typically gets wiped down. So I'd say at this point, you might ask why I haven't washed the car. So now my wide body is vinyl wrapped. So I do a little bit different on cleaning up the exterior than I would if I washed the car. Typically, if I was going to start this process, I would wash the car immediately. That way it can drip dry as I'm cleaning everything else. That way I don't have to worry about, cleaning the glass, then washing the car and getting it kind of dirty and all that stuff. So you're probably going to start the whole process itself, you're probably going to start it by cleaning your cleaning your car through a car wash. So you can spray the bottom, etc., getting it ready to go, and that way you can let it drip dry from everything else. Now from this point on, I know the car is in position where I want it. I want to get the wheels and tires off, which I'll explain why, and I'm going to do that prior to wiping down the vinyl wrap. All right, so once all the tires are off, I typically stack them in a nice stack, and you can see each one is labeled how they came off the car. So right rear on top, left rear, or front right, and then front left. So that way I know exactly where they came off. Now you can choose when you put them back on to either put them on the exact spot they came off of, or you could rotate them. So I could take the right rear and put it on the front rear, or front right, I just get it again. And then do like the left rear to the left front, etc. Once you get the wheels and tires off, it really gives you a chance to kind of look in there. So you can kind of see if anything is dirty. You can kind of see up in this pocket up here how much gravel and stuff. So I'll try to get some of this gravel and things out of the car. Otherwise, it's good. Now you'll notice that I do have a jack stand underneath the axle versus the body. So the reason to put the jack stand underneath the axle versus the body. If you support the body, what tends to happen is the axle weight drops all the way down until something stops and keeps it from going. Now the thing that will catch before anything else is going to be your shocks in the rear. Now leaving the axle weight for me for 4 months, pulling down on that shock, what it tends to do is put a little bit more stress on the seals itself, and kind of over time, now, I'm not saying it can happen, but it can happen, is that it wears out the shocks themselves, kind of these seals on it, and you may start getting a weeping. May not happen over one winter, but multiples it could. So if you can, put jack stands underneath the axle. That way it will support the axle, and the shocks itself don't have to take the brunt of the gravity and the weight of the axle, and then the springs can support the body itself. Now under the front of the car, it's a little bit harder because you can't really get a jack stand necessarily underneath the control arm. So I typically just put the front two underneath the subframes, the subframe connectors itself, and then you can see on each axle I've put the lug nuts back on the lugs. That way it just keeps, basically I know where they are. I don't have to go searching for them later on. Just have to take them back off, throw the wheel on, zip them on, and it's done after a torque wrench. Now the best thing about this is that I can see that there's a ton of gravel up in this wheel well here. So I'll get the shop vac out, clean all that out, get it ready for next year, and then I can move on to getting the vinyl wrap wiped down. All right, so let's talk about the fluids in the car, because those are going to need to be prepared prior to winter. So the fuel system itself, on the fuel tank itself, one of the things you need to do is stabilize the gas. Now, you can get stabilizer in multiple brands out there. I know there's AMSOIL, there's Stable, you name it, it's probably out there. Follow the directions on the box. A lot of times they're going to give you directions for about 3 months of stabilization. I normally double whatever it recommends, which would typically get you out at least to the 4 months for me, but that might even get you out 6 months to a year. Something might happen, who knows, but just prepare for the worst on that. Now, put that in prior to filling the tank fully. Now, the reason to fill a tank is that gasoline then will basically fill a tank, get most of the interior of the tank covered. Now, when it doesn't have it in, what it does is it traps moisture in there, and that moisture can cause rust and other things. So I'm not saying in 3 to 6 months that's really going to happen too much, but I'd rather be prepared for the worst case scenario. Who knows? Maybe this car is going to sit a year. I'd prefer for the worst. So stabilize it for up to a year. Doesn't hurt it anyway, other than you're going to use a little bit more material, and fill the gas tank. Now, once it's done there, you're going to run the car for about 15 minutes, and that should get the stabilized gasoline, which is going to be mixed. That's why you put the stabilizer in prior to the gas, is to let that gas kind of churn around in there and mix it up. That'll get it all the way up through the engine, injectors, or carburetor, whichever you have, but it will get it through there, and that way it's done. Now, once you let it run for about 15 minutes, that's also going to heat up everything. So engine, all the stuff there, exhaust, and it's going to get rid of any condensation that is sitting in there now. It's going to burn that out and heat it out. Now, concerning engine oil, well, prior to going to sleep for the winter, you should change the oil and filter. Now, the reason for that is the oil itself tends to break down. That's when it goes from that nice honey gold color into a dark brown black. Hopefully not anything like syrup. But when you change the oil, what you're doing is getting rid of all the contamination or anything else. And oil tends to turn acidic. So leaving it sit in your engine over winter, if it's dirty, tends to add wear to the inside surface. So just changing it out, getting fresh oil in the filter means it's all ready to go. And you don't have to add any stabilizer or anything there. Just to let it sit for 6 months, no problem. It'll be ready to go once it's ready to start up with a fresh oil change. Now, concerning the radiator itself, you can look down in here and just make sure it's full. Now, inside my shop, it never freezes. It doesn't get down to 32 or less. So I typically just run a simple 50-50 coolant and distilled water. And if I have to refresh anything during the summer, I do it just with distilled water itself. Just keeping coolant in there helps it to not to freeze, but not to overheat. And inside the shop here, it only gets down to maybe 45 or so. Even worst case scenario, we're good to go. Top off your brake fluid, top off your power steering, And you can also top off your washer fluid if you want to. Not really a requirement, but you might as well do it now while you're doing everything else, rather than have to do it in the spring before you get the car out. Okay, so at this point, you should almost be done except for wiping down the car. Now, another benefit of doing an oil change and checking all your fluids is that you can get a chance to poke around underneath the car. You can look for any leaks, anything that has changed. Hopefully you have no leaks, but you might spot a couple drips of oil here or there. And then you can check around and say, that might be something I need to work on this winter if I don't actually have to just leave it in storage. So with that, the fluids are done, the trunk is done, the interior is done, everything's vacuumed out under the suspension, everything's all ready. So it's finally time to get this vinyl wrap wiped down. All right, so this car hasn't been wiped down in a couple months, and I've driven it a couple times since then. So I can tell you what, this wide body is absolutely dusty. Not really muddy, thank goodness. So I'm going to clean this in 2 stages. You can go straight away to cleaning if you want to with the vinyl wrap care from Avery Dennison. That's what I use. Or you can do it 2-stage, which is what I do. Both is going to use a microfiber towel, a clean one on both steps. And on the first one, I just use basically some dish soap and water. The water itself helps the dirt flow off, and the dish soap helps to break it up if there's any kind of grease or contamination in there. It really doesn't damage the wrap that I've seen. So I do it in 2 stages. Now I know it takes twice as long to do it this way, but if you beat on your wrap like I do, that typically is what happens. So with the wrap complete or completely wiped down, there's an extra step you can do on vinyl wraps, and that is to seal them. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to let this dry a little bit more via air, and then I'm going to get out my car wrap sealant, go over it once more time using a fresh towel and the sealant, and get this all kind of sealed up for the winter. Just keeps a little bit of extra protection. It's kind of, think of it like a wrap wax kind of deal. So that'll go on, and then I'll put a car cover over it, and everything is going to be done at that point. So out of all this, if you do anything differently, I'd love to hear about it. This is what I do typically for my stuff. Being it's in a garage, I don't have to worry about rodents, so no mothballs, no dryer sheets in the floorboard, anything like that. I don't really have to worry about it. So if you guys do, take precautions there. Now, I did talk about changing my 2020 vision from the video, at least is what I released. So you guys, we got to talk. Some of the other changes I'm going to do is I've decided that I'm going to sell this Cobra R fascia. Now, one thing I had thought about doing was cutting basically the top half of it off, or some portion of that, and putting it here on the WideFox. And really, well, honestly, it doesn't fit SCCA rules, and it's just going to be too big just because of at least the front lip there on the top. So you can see how much that sticks out from the fascia itself. That is going to push over the rules. The rules on SCCA is that it cannot extend past the OEM line of the bumper. So basically you can see right where the molding is. It cannot stick out past that. So unfortunately, most of the time I'm probably going to run SCCA, and that is not going to fit. So if you guys are interested in this, I've just got it for $300. Of course, it is or best offer, but you got to come to Klamath Falls to get it. I am not going to ship this thing. It is monstrous. Just not worth the shipping. It's probably going to be like $200, and it's not worth that. So if you guys are in NorCal, Oregon, something like that, we can work out a deal. But if anybody wants this, it's for sale. I am not going to run it. I'm just going to let her go. So I spent this last week sending emails back and forth with Maximum Motorsports Tech. And really, they've helped me get to this point with the suspension on getting the wide body running at least and driving for over a year. And their advice has been spot on to this point. So the next step, which I talked about doing a lot of autocross and everything else, I kind of told them what I wanted to do. And basically, they told me to stop everything I'm doing. So I was going to get a set of springs for that, and really everything I had planned for 2020 for the suspension and everything else, I won't say everything, but the spring choice and all that stuff is out. Because I've gone to such large tires, it pretty much is going to, there's nothing, I guess, no bolt-in springs or etc. that are going to go in this thing, and dampers that are not going to make this thing completely horrible and competitive. So from that, I'm going to switch over to coilovers, which I had said I probably would never do. And really talking through them, there's a lot of benefit. And what I didn't realize was that I don't have to use their K-member and lower control arms to do coilovers. I can keep my stock K-member and stock OEM front arms. So yay for that. No change on the Maximum Motorsports lowers that I just put in. And from there, it's going to require a lot more stuff to go in it. But there's a plan in place. And as with any typical budget, you have a expectation level of what you're going to spend. You end up doubling it, and then it goes a little higher. And that's exactly what has happened to me in order to go this next step. So being ready in February, unless I win the lottery or sell a kidney, I don't think I'm going to get there. So that just means next year I'm probably going to do a lot more build stuff, drive it around, and not a lot of autocross just yet, maybe in the latter half of the year. So with that, hopefully that gives you an idea of what I do to get the wide body together and what I'm going to have to change going forward to get it to that next plateau or that next step of what I want to do with the car. So with that, you do something different, let me know. I'd love to hear it. Drop it in the comments. Hit me a like, subscribe, any of those, and we'll see you next time.